mid-October, we leave Wisconsin's glorious autumn for Australia's lovely springtime. The long flight takes us first across the U.S. and then across the wide Pacific before we land in Brisbane. This is a nature study tour, beginning on the outskirts of Brisbane at Lone Pine Sanctuary for a close-up view of animals we hope to see in the wild, including the rare platypus. We are a small group of 15 people, with local naturalists as guides.
Leaving the city, we make frequent stops, sometimes to observe wildlife, sometimes in villages along the way. Coming to the mountains, we are in Lamington National Park, on the border of Queensland and New South Wales.
Within the park, O'Reilly's Guest House for Australians was begun in 1918 as a retreat for wildlife and people. Still run very personally by the O'Reillys, it has a magic feeling of peace and calm. Unafraid of people, wildlife roams freely. The brush turkey, the regent bowerbird, the crimson rosella. Our little cottage is surrounded by mountain views. With the ringing of the dinner bell, we join other guests. Back inside, we join the Aussies in an enthusiastic sing-along. In down under country, a trail is called a track. The brush turkey builds a big mound to incubate eggs, continually adjusting the mass to the temperature. Woody vines or lianas hang like ropes or wind around each other.
A hillside botanical garden, lovingly tended over many years, gives a feeling of tranquility.
Peter O'Reilly looks out over the McPherson Range before leading us on a rugged 6-mile hike down the mountainside from the temperate rainforest of the higher altitude to the subtropical rainforest of the valley. In early years, pack horses transported cream and meat down to Carey Valley and returned with supplies. So this is known as Stockyard Creek Track. A iguana monitor eludes us by climbing a tree. Reaching the subtropical rainforest, we smell campfire smoke. The first ones to reach the stream are chattering as they prepare lunch and are boiling the billy, Australian for making the tea. Our hike continues past a magnificent tree with great curving buttresses. In the distance, we hear the bellbird tinkling. Finally, the track takes us through the valley to a waiting van and a scenic return route.
On a morning hike to Moran's Falls, our naturalist guide points out a golden-crowned snake, a big beetle the color of a mossy log, a blue crab hiding in a tree crevice, a bird nest decorated with lichen.
Watching the satin bowerbird is an unusual experience. To do so, we wriggle inside a compact thicket. The satin bowerbird collects anything blue he can find and builds his bower by inserting twigs into the ground. When the female approaches, he will dance among his precisely placed blue possessions, making his strange rattling sound. Copulation will take place within the bower. Before the time of man's junk, he collected blue flowers, feathers, anything naturally blue. The wishing tree track takes us past tall tree ferns as we listen to unusual bird calls. A whipbird makes a whipping sound. The green catbird cries like a baby. We leave Lamington National Park, driving past grass trees, not palms. They grow an inch a year and can be thousands of years old. On O'Reilly's little-traveled private road, a bearded dragon bars our way. We startle a red-necked wallaby who hops away into the brush. Next day, we fly to Darwin, administrative center of Northern Territory, which Australians call Top End. Here north is tropical. By the Timor Sea, we watch the sunset, turning the crest of each oncoming wave to gold. Next morning, we are on the road by sunrise, en route to Fog Dam, a nature preserve. After breakfast beside the marsh, we hike, enjoying the tropical climate. Green ants make nests in trees by fastening leaves together, and corellas make their home in the marsh. Also, brolga cranes.
Our luggage and cooking facilities for outdoor meals right behind our minibus. Driving to Corinda, we watch for wildlife as we near Kakadu National Park in Northern Territory. Corinda means happy meeting place in Aboriginal language.
Pleasant cottages are located among mango trees where fruit bats, known as flying foxes, feed at night. Also, Pride of India trees and poinciana. Yellow water is so named because sunset brings out mineral tints in the water. A morning walk reveals pandanus fruit, a sea eagle's nest, and the ever-present eucalyptus, of which there are 300 varieties here. Yellow River is home for much wildlife, seen best from the water. Black swans, a female darter. Along the banks are very extensive lotus beds. An Australian pelican with magpie geese. A flock of whistling ducks. Pygmy geese on the wing. A plumed egret. The long toes of the lotus bird or lily trotter enable her to scurry over lily pads, with her babies following. A pied stilt. Shell ducks. The sun rises over a billabong, Australian term for a bayou.
As we are traveling, we see the hills of the cathedral ants. Grass eaters, they are the smallest of their species, but they build the biggest nests. The white ant eats the tree it builds against, eventually destroying it.
The escarpment rises abruptly from the flat plain. Of conglomerate sandstone, it is the oldest sandstone formation in the world. Here at Norlangi Rock, caves and overhangs protect Aboriginal rock paintings, open to the public only since 1978. Our guide Tom points out the protective overhang. As seen here above the paintings, which depict scenes of myth, legend, or daily life. Some paintings may be over 20,000 years old, among the most ancient artistic works in human history. Aborigines believe the earliest paintings were done by spirit people. The stick figures are some of the oldest. Later X-ray paintings show internal structures of the body. The figure on the right is Lightning Man. The band encircling his body represents lightning. Stone axes on his head strike the clouds and release lightning. Here women are portrayed with what are perhaps ceremonial headdresses, perhaps stylized rays of hair, or perhaps halos. Some paintings depict scenes from nature.
Driving to another river experience, we see wild buffalo, and a sand guana monitor escaping up a tree. We board the Adelaide River Queen for a ride on the longest navigable river in Australia. Bamboo grows along the banks of this tidal river, and water buffalo graze beside it. The boat disturbs large flocks of corellas as we pass.
Back in Darwin at the shopping mall, we find the Aboriginal art shop featuring traditional bark paintings still done by the Aborigines. Ancient paintings were also done on bark, which did not last. In remote areas, there are still Aborigines who retain primitive beliefs and lifestyles, a contrast to the clerk in the art shop. In an opal shop, we admire Australia's native stone. Our plane wings its way over the arid outback before we land at Alice Springs, located here because water was found underground. One enters or leaves Alice Springs through the gap. During the 300-mile drive across the outback, our coach captain plays a tape of Australian folk song.
Our coach captain, he's a very nice bloke to know. Our coach captain, he runs the Outback Travel and Show. And he certainly isn't.
In early years, camels were used by explorers. Some are still used, and some are wild in the outback. But the vastness of Red Center, as the Aussies call it, is mostly home for an occasional dingo.
Now we really mustn't call his coach a bus. Oh, no.
On this lonely desert, we pass a salt lake with very high salt content. Finally, under the endless sky, Ayers Rock rises from the desert floor. From 2 miles away, we watch the glow on Ayers Rock gradually change as the sun sets. At 6 a.m., our guide turns us loose, telling us to separate and return in an hour and 40 minutes. We too have the feeling of being completely alone under the great dome of blue sky above. Underfoot, the endless red floor of the desert, punctuated by silvery, brittle spinifex. Momentarily, a thorny devil appears. Unlimited space, solitary silence, clear air, and vibrant color combine to create a memorable experience.
When we return to the coach, our guide is cooking bacon and eggs for breakfast, and the billy is boiling for tea.
Another way to see Ayers Rock and the Olga Mountains is from a small plane. In the distance, we see first the Olgas, 25 miles from Ayers Rock. Conglomerate formations, they have been weathered into a bizarre cluster of soaring domes and deep chasms. Now Ayers Rock, that amazing single monolith of stone. We fly low along the side, then over the top where the trail is a white line in the center of the picture. Climbing the rock is a difficult and dangerous feat. Plaques commemorate those who died in the strenuous effort. The climbing of Ayers Rock was one of his lifelong ambitions. To allow time to walk beside it, we climb just partway up it. A sturdy safety chain is provided on the steepest part. We have a feeling of being one with the rock. Sacred to the Aborigines, Ayers Rock has become a mecca for all. Another way to feel the mystique of the rock is to walk the trail beside it. Ayers Rock actually belongs to the Aborigines. Certain areas forbidden to outsiders are still used for their ritual observances. Caves may have served for meetings, and in the bell-shaped cave, ritualistic observances were held. This natural form in the rock, like a great cross, is known to the Aborigines as the sacred pole. We eat lunch in its colorful presence, then drive along beside it. This world's largest monolith is 1.5 miles wide, 2.5 miles long, and 1,143 feet high. We have felt its changing moods as we flew over it, climbed upon it, walked beside it, ate beside it, and drove along it. 25 miles from Ayers Rock are the Olga Mountains. Kangaroo Rock, with the forepaw held near the eyes, he is dying in pain. Some Aborigines still today believe this is an actual creature turned to stone in mythical times, which they call Dreamtime. In their belief, mythological beings became rocks, animals, stars, sun, moon. From a secluded site, we watch the sunset's changing hues on the Olgas. Our campfire echoes the sunset glow, while our steaks are cooking. Afterwards, around the campfire, we hear about Aboriginal history, legend, mythology, surrounded by the darkness of night, and try to play their didgeridoo. In all our hotels, tea and coffee with facilities for making them are provided in the rooms. Often cookies or fruit as well.
On our way to the airport, our last look at Red Center is a striking contrast to the green tablelands of northeastern Australia. A transition zone with woodlands and tropical rainforests. In the charming town of Atherton is a 100-year-old hotel with beautiful carved wood interiors. We drive towards the Seven Sisters, one of them called Flat Top, on our way to Granite Gorge Park.
We sit on an edge overlooking a deep chasm, watching the rock wallabies on the opposite side. Our naturalist David is explaining the great bowerbird, which selects white objects to surround his slightly different bower. White snails, wallaby bones bleached in the sun. Inside the bower, he snips off any sharp twigs. Deep in the forest, we find the bower of the golden bowerbird, festooned with green lichen and moss. We observe a variety of termite hills. One just like a haystack. Evenings in the forest The time of the 2-minute cicada concert is consistently predictable. A well-camouflaged night creature is the leaf-tailed gecko. He positions himself upside down so his tail, shaped like a leaf, will fool predators into thinking it's his head. At dawn, on a lonely country road, we watch platypus far below, splashing about. Extremely shy and almost impossible to photograph, his duck bill can be seen in the lower right corner. Afterwards, breakfast is French toast, cooked by David and his wife Kirsten, and eaten in Lake Eacham National Park. The laughing kookaburra is an Australian favorite. As we hike along the tropical rainforest, we see the hairy Mary, sometimes called wait a while, a palm with barbed fronds that takes the form of a dangling vine, so vicious that its curved barbs can rip open one's skin. In the forest, ants build their nests on trees. When a bird deposits its seed in the crown of a tree, the strangler fig roots grow downward. When this host tree leaned over, the fig roots continued to grow straight down, forming a thick curtain. This process took 500 years. Even larger, this cathedral fig is about 1,200 years old. A massive tree, its roots fan out far on the surface, deriving nourishment from the rich litter of the forest floor.
We are en route to Palmerston National Park, where we hike a trail to Palmerston Falls.
On a dim forest track, the cassowary, a large flightless bird, is tending his chicks. In the cassowary family, it is the male who rears the chicks. Following a barely discernible trail, we come to a green room. High overhead, a green ceiling is created by the fan palms. Atop tall, tapering trunks, each fan is like a round water lily pad, an enchanted forest.
A feature of Ballender Kerr National Park is Josephine Falls, where our tour director Tony plays Tarzan, and where we have lunch at the edge of the forest.
Once a jolly swagman camping by a billabong under the shade of a coolabah tree, and he sang as he sat.
On our way to Cairns, we pass fields of sugar cane. On the outskirts of town, we find a camp of flying foxes high in the trees. Like great cocoons they hang, with wings wrapped around their bodies.
We drive past banana groves on our way to Port Douglas for our next exciting adventure, the Great Barrier Reef. Waves break over the outer reef, our destination.
The Quicksilver docks beside the snorkeling platform, a permanent structure anchored in the sea. We eat lunch on the platform before riding the submarine to see the coral reef. Through the heavy glass, The camera can't adequately capture the colors, but we see a kaleidoscope of bright coral, colorful fish, deep canyons. A giant clam opens his mouth. Later, a shuttle boat takes us to the Challenger, a much smaller ship than the Quicksilver, where just our group will eat and sleep. After sunset at sea, we retire to our blue and white cabin and rise early for sunrise over the coral sea. Carl proudly displays his early morning catch.
A coral trout.
After breakfast, we shuttle back to the platform to snorkel by ourselves. As I adjust my snorkel tube, David instructs me to hold on to the railing while getting the feel of the mask and of the water before striking out on my own for a thrilling experience. An underwater viewing chamber at the side of the platform gives a different view. The crew and hostess of the Quicksilver bid us all goodbye at Port Douglas.
Bye. Goodbye.
Goodbye. How about that?
Next morning, we sail for Green Island, another national park, which lies halfway between shore and the outer reef. Before we reach the island, an underwater observatory takes us far down under the coral sea, where we are actually on the reef looking through glass special for photographing. We have entered a strange new world of vibrant action. Coral of every color and form, pulsating and swaying, opening and closing. In and out among the coral dart dazzlingly brilliant fish. We hike around this small picture book island. A fitting farewell to our nature study tour of Australia's green forests, red sands, and coral reefs.
The country of New Zealand is made up of 2 islands, north and south. We start our scenic tour by bus on South Island in Christchurch. This very English city has parks that border the Avon River and beautiful gardens. Featured in the town square is the neo-Gothic cathedral.
We head south across the Canterbury Plains. To our first glimpse of the Southern Alps. At Lake Tekapo, we take off in a little single-engine Cessna for a close view of the Mount Cook Range. Mount Cook, the highest in Australasia, is the one on which Hillary trained for his Mount Everest climb. In the range, there are many peaks over 10,000 feet. The Maori called Mount Cook Aurangi, Cloud Piercer. How can one describe the exhilaration of being in this little plane, darting this way and that, dipping one way and then the other? over white peaks and black ridges, against blue sky and changing cloud patterns. Tremendous glaciers flow down the valley. Banks of snow are 80 feet deep in this rugged grandeur. We are in an unbelievable world of ice and snow. Following the valley back to the lake, we come down to earth on a grassy runway. These awesome mountains, which rise so sharply, can also be viewed from Mount Cook National Park.
We leave this area to drive through Lindis Pass, a sharp contrast to snowy ranges. The mighty Clutha River has created a deep gorge. This modern bridge replaces the picturesque one built in 1880.
Arriving in Queenstown, we take a gondola lift for a view of this picture book village. Someone called it a town fit for a queen, and the name remained. On our downward trip, a deer also enjoys the view. A half-hour ride across the lake takes us to Cecil Peak, a sheep station. After docking, we walk between huge eucalyptus trees, to be met by Ian, who explains the workings of a sheep station and the function of sheepdogs, called huntaways. He blows his shepherd's whistle and gives a command to his sheepdogs, who take off at a furious pace to round up a flock of sheep that come tearing down the hillside. Next, a close-up demonstration of sheep shearing. Leaving the big ram quite nude. Returning from Cecil Peak, we walk along Queenstown's Lake Wakatipu, extremely deep and 98% pure. Our walk takes us by a game of lawn bowling. The ladies precisely dressed in white outfits and intent on the game.
Historic Arrowtown was a gold mining town. We visit a gem cutting shop, where New Zealand jade is a featured stone, and a market where lamb is a featured meat.
We board the Kingston Flyer, a coal-fired steam train from 1915. A large flock of sheep controlled by sheepdogs is being moved to higher pasture. Heading south, the drive to Milford Sound takes us through beech forest, with trail stops along the way, to Mirror Lake, and through mossy forest to a waterfall. Fiordland National Park is the third largest in the world. The way to Milford Sound leads through Homer Tunnel. It was begun in 1935 with pick, shovel, and wheelbarrow. Above us, 3,000 feet of mountain and no lighting in the 3/4-mile tunnel. Mitre Peak is a much photographed feature of this national park. We board our ship, Mitre Peak 2, for our fjord trip through Milford Sound. Mountains rise abruptly from the blue water to the blue sky. As we travel, sheep are an integral part of the New Zealand landscape. Dunedin is known as the Edinburgh of the South. This tower, reminiscent of the Sir Walter Scott Monument in downtown Edinburgh. Dunedin is the most Scottish city outside Scotland, even to the Scotch broom dotting the landscape. In British tradition, we stop for tea breaks, forenoons and afternoons. Flying from South Island, our tour of North Island begins in Wellington, capital of New Zealand. Government buildings include Parliament Building, called the Beehive, seat of New Zealand's government. A cable car takes us up Mount Victoria for a view of this harbor city and for a walk through the rose gardens. Old St. Paul's was built in 1866, entirely of native timbers. As we cross high sheep country, our guide buys a large box of plump strawberries to pass around the bus.
After seeing so many sheep, we tour a tannery. First past washed skins, which are next stretched and clamped, and later hung to dry, before being offered for sale.
Water power is commonly used, but near Rotorua, a more economical source is underground thermal action. In an area similar to our Yellowstone, geothermal engineers drill underground to tap the steam, which is then piped to the power plant. In Rotorua, we see the flightless kiwi bird. New Zealanders are called kiwis, and the kiwi bird appears on their coins. A Maori guide takes us through a traditional Maori village. It was hand-hewn longboats that brought Maoris in 1350 to uninhabited New Zealand. The meeting house is decorated with Maori wood carving, which has its own distinctive form. A Maori warrior, with tongue extended and down, represents defiance. In the past, the woodcarver was a priestly rank. Today, skilled woodcarvers keep alive traditions of myth and legend in their work. A tour of Maori village takes us through thermal fields, where one geyser spouts every 30 seconds, and where mud pools boil and explode in the air. Maori burial ground is tapu, sacred hill. The higher one is buried, the higher the rank. The Maori church is located on the original village site. Hot springs erupt throughout the town of Rotorua. A hangi is a Maori feast prepared in the traditional way. The feast is followed by a concert, beginning with a war chant and closing with a love song. In New Zealand, people surround their homes with flowers, which fill even the smallest yards. In both Australia and New Zealand, the special warmth and friendliness of the people has added to our enjoyment. Hedges make picturesque fences. Kiwi fruit is supported and must be protected by windscreens. The city of Auckland sits astride an isthmus between the Tasman Sea and the Pacific Ocean. New Zealand's largest city, Auckland, has a great university and a growing population. As we fly homeward, the sunrise above the clouds is an appropriate close to colorful down under country.